studios of ITN, The News, with Dermot Murnaghan.
Good evening. The government tonight ordered two major inquiries to discover if Gulf War syndrome is fact or fiction. Each inquiry will have to find out whether the health of servicemen and women was damaged by injections and tablets given to them before they fought. Gulf War veterans have claimed that they were affected. And today the Surgeon General said particular attention would be paid to anti-nerve gas tablets which were issued. Our defence correspondent Penny Marshall explains.
This far-reaching government investigation into Gulf War syndrome is a major victory for the veterans of Desert Storm and a shift in government policy, although ministers are still insisting any syndrome doesn't exist.
We believe there is no Gulf War syndrome. The Americans believe there is no Gulf War syndrome. I don't think the Royal College of Physicians believe there is a Gulf War syndrome. But there are people who are ill who served in the Gulf. They believe that they have an illness which was caused by their service in the Gulf. And it's our job to find out, to get to the bottom of that.
Nigel Thompson, a Gulf War veteran who now suffers from motor neurone disease, believes his Gulf service may have caused his condition. Tonight he told ITN he was relieved the government appears to be treating his claims seriously. The government is also investigating the incidences of birth defects amongst children born to Gulf War veterans. Children like Liam Shannon, whose case has been highlighted in a series of investigative reports on News at 10 over the last 3 months. Ben Whitehead's parents also believe his health problems may be linked to his father's Gulf experience. Now independent experts will examine their claims.
We are a group of experts from various universities and hospitals around the country. We've made it clear to the Surgeon General that if we do this investigation, we expect that we should publish the results of the investigation. And I'm sure that none of us would take part in the work unless that were the case.
Veterans maintain their illnesses are all linked to the series of injections and tablets they were given in the Gulf. But the MOD has always maintained there's no evidence that their varied complaints are connected. The government already has one doctor working full-time on the case. He's so far seen 350 veterans and wants to see more. He hopes today's initiative will encourage them to come forward.
I want to find out what's going on with these people. I want to establish if there is a pattern of illness as a result of Gulf War service. So I would urge them to come forward. If my results are embarrassing for MOD, then that's their problem, not mine.
This major inquiry will involve talking to thousands of veterans and their children. It's unprecedented in its scale, but MOD scientists say it will take at least 2 or 3 years before their investigation can yield any positive results. Penny Marshall, ITN, at the Ministry of Defence.
Next in the early evening news, royal privacy row over taping of Duke's phone call. Leading Republican murdered as Minister meets Sinn Féin. And Paul McCartney meets his Performing Arts Club band. Buckingham Palace said today it deplored the actions of the eavesdropper who's reported to have recorded the Duke of Edinburgh's mobile phone call. It's prompted MPs to call for a change in the law. Here's our royal correspondent Nicholas Owen.
The Duke of Edinburgh and his family at Sandringham at Christmas. During this holiday, his conversation with an unidentified woman on a mobile phone was apparently scanned, eavesdropped and recorded. It seems he discussed several of the family, including the Queen and the possible divorce of the Prince and Princess of Wales. This new bugging drama infuriated some MPs.
The law does definitely need to be tidied up. It is absolutely ludicrous that people's private conversation should be tapped in this way and just be held up for the general public for ridicule.
It's the latest in a string of similar incidents. In August 1992, the Sun newspaper detailed a conversation between the Princess of Wales and her friend James Gilby. He called her Squidgy. Soon afterwards, another call was reported between the Duchess of York and Prince Andrew. Then the Camillagate affair that November, a very intimate conversation between Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles. The Princess of Wales confirmed her bugging episode in her Panorama interview.
Did you have the alleged telephone conversation?
Yes, we did. Absolutely, we did. Yeah, we did.
Have you any idea how that conversation came to be published in the national press?
No, but it was done to harm me in a serious manner, and that was the first time I'd experienced what it was like to be outside the net, so to speak, and not be in the family.
Around Sandringham in Norfolk, poor reception meant that Prince Phillip used a relatively old-fashioned analogue mobile phone. The problem is that a relatively cheap electronic scanner can bug those older mobiles. Up-to-date digital phones can't be intercepted.
At present time, there is no system to do that whereas systems for picking up cellular telephone in analog form have been around for years and years.
Buckingham Palace said today, "We leave it to others to judge an eavesdropper who listens to private conversations and makes available what he gleans by devious means to the media. Taping and making public a private call is distasteful." There's no sign yet whether royal officials now want to pursue legal moves over this affair. Nicholas Owen, ITN, Buckingham Palace.
A court in Leeds heard today how a man murdered 3 teenagers to keep them from revealing he was homosexual. The prosecution said the killings were so similar they had to be the work of one man. Steven Grieveson denies the charges. Our North of England correspondent Steve Scott was in court.
The parents of the 3 murdered teenagers arriving at court, where today they listened to details of how, according to the prosecution, their sons were killed. 18-year-old Thomas Kelly's burnt body was found in an allotment shed near his home in Sunderland. Less than 3 months later, 15-year-old David Hanson was dumped in a derelict house. Again, he had been set alight. Then, 17 days later, David Grief, also 15, was killed. Police came across his body in another burnt-out hut, close to the site where they'd made their original find. Both Davids went to the same school in Monkwearmouth. Thomas was a former pupil here. The prosecution said initially detectives and pathologists ruled out murder, but a second round of examinations uncovered evidence that all 3 had been strangled with a ligature. John Milford QC told the court the similarities in each case were so numerous and so striking they could only have been the work of one man. Mr. Milford claimed there were 2 reasons why Steven Grieveson, and secondly, simply because he enjoyed killing and setting fire to their bodies. Grieveson denies the murders. Steve Scott, ITN, Leeds.
A leading Republican thought to be the Chief of Staff of the Irish National Liberation Army was gunned down in Belfast today. Gino Gallagher was shot dead as Gerry Adams and Sir Patrick Mayhew met at Stormont for talks over the latest crisis in the peace process. John Irvine has the story.
Some of the witnesses were treated for shock. They'd seen the gunman approach and shoot the victim as he signed on in the Falls Road Dole office. The murder may be linked to some kind of Republican dispute. For the dead man, Gino Gallagher was a member of the Irish Republican Socialist Party, the political wing of a terror group, the INLA, of which he may also have been a leader. The killing happened as Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams was leaving a meeting with the Secretary of State. Mr. Adams had asked that the Prime Minister's proposal for an election here be retracted.
I pointed out in the discussion that if Mr. Major was really so concerned about elections that he should call a Westminster election.
But Sir Patrick Mayhew said a local election would create confidence and the plan was not going to be scrapped.
It's not living in the real world to expect people to retract what they have said they identify as a means of getting confidence.
A sharp division remains and Mr. Adams is now going to Washington, where he will try to get American opinion on the nationalist side. John Irvine, ITN, Belfast.
Well, live now to John Irvine. John, has that shooting had any effect on the talks?
All the indications are that this was a gangland-type murder. I think it'll have little effect on a political process that has, as we've seen, run into problems over this election idea. Now, the SDLP leader, John Hume, has been meeting the Prime Minister in London, and he will have urged John Major to scrap the election plan, but it's already clear the government just isn't prepared to do that.
So what hope that these rifts can be healed?
Well, there's an Anglo-Irish conference meeting due to take place on Thursday, and I think it's terribly important. This whole process has never looked shakier than when London and Dublin are bickering, as they have over the last week, over this election question. And I think government ministers on both sides will be extremely keen to resolve their differences and to once again present a united front.
Thanks very much indeed, John. The Prime Minister hit back at university bosses today. He told them they couldn't complain about their treatment by the government. It follows a call by university vice-chancellors for a £300 signing-on fee for students. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent Kevin Dunn.
At present, entry to university education is free for all, though more and more students are taking out loans to pay for food and lodging. Now, because of government cuts, the universities are threatening to charge most students for their places.
Although the headlines today have been Vice-Chancellors recommend a £300 registration levy. That will actually only come about if government cuts us back again in the next budget.
In the Commons, the Prime Minister said there was no need for an entrance fee.
I see no need for universities to introduce top-up fees. They certainly cannot complain about how they've been treated by the government.
Students are outraged.
I don't really think it's fair. I think it's just adding to all the business of student loans and grants. Student loans going up, grants going down.
University heads meet on Friday to decide whether to adopt the charge, which new students could start paying next year. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
The Millionaire zookeeper John Aspinall today won his fight to allow his keepers back into tigers' cages. The controversial methods used by Aspinall's Kent Zoo involved keepers bonding with wild animals. The practice was banned by Canterbury City Council in 1994 when animal handler Trevor Smith died after being mauled by a tiger. An industrial tribunal today overruled the ban but said the zoo had agreed to a more rigorous safety regime. The world's most famous opera singer Luciano Pavarotti said he was devastated today by news that Venice's La Fenice Opera House had been destroyed by fire. An international appeal has already been launched to restore the 200-year-old building. Robin White reports.
Engulfed in flames, one of the world's most beautiful and historic opera houses was totally destroyed. First reports suggested the fire at La Fenice was started by an electrical fault. The building had been closed for several months for renovation. The damage has been estimated at £200 million. Speaking on Italian television, Luciano Pavarotti said, "This theatre was our jewel." The sight of such destruction has saddened opera fans around the world.
To those of us who work in opera, it's great history. It was where Verdi and Rossini premiered operas, and that's very upsetting.
The Mayor of Venice has pledged that the theatre will live up to its name, the Phoenix, and rise from the ashes of the fire which has left only a blackened ruin. Robin White, ITN.
Some news just in. A schoolboy aged 11 has been arrested on suspicion of supplying the drug amphetamine to fellow pupils. Police said today it followed an incident at a large secondary school in Kirby on Merseyside where the boy is a first-year pupil. The boy is on bail and the substance is being analysed. The long and winding road to stardom was made a little bit easier today thanks to Paul McCartney. He returned to Liverpool to open a new fame school for budding stars, and Ben McCarthy was there.
Reviving memories of the fans that helped to make him famous, Paul McCartney returned to Liverpool today for the inauguration of a school for others who want to follow in his footsteps to stardom. The Institute is on the site of Paul McCartney's old school. But it now runs degree courses in music, dance and drama and will teach the skills required for practical management in the arts. The former Beatle has pumped £1 million of his own money into the project. It's even received a cash donation from the Queen. Today's ceremony had the kind of showbiz atmosphere which the students hope they'll one day enjoy. For the man who's already made it to the top, an emotional moment.
One of my great feelings now is how proud my mum and dad would have been if they could have been here. But I won't get into that because I'll start crying. The very best of luck. You will need it, but keep at it. And even though, as Peter said, it was a hard day's night, we can work it out.
Paul McCartney will soon be back at the school teaching songwriting as part of the curriculum. And he says he might be able to pass on a few tricks of the trade. Ben McCarthy, ITN, Liverpool.
On News at 10 with Trevor MacDonald, as the government decides to investigate Gulf War syndrome, we take a British 3-year-old and his parents to America to find out how differently they treat children with similar symptoms. And the main news is that official investigation into so-called Gulf War syndrome. It will look into illnesses amongst Gulf veterans and babies born to them. And that's Tuesday's early evening news until 5:40 tomorrow. Goodbye.
Hello, good evening.
Well, it was cold again today, but not quite as cold as it has been. It was windy too, but the winds not quite as strong as they've been over the last few days. And we had cloudy skies, but they weren't quite as grey as they have been. All small steps in the right direction, and things will continue to improve slowly during the week. In particular, we'll lose this very cold easterly wind that we've had. It's gradually going to turn more to the south and east, get much lighter too, and that will at least make it feel a little bit warmer than it has been. You can see all that happening on the charts. For tomorrow, we still have the high pressure out to the east, bringing that very cold air on those easterly winds right in across most of Britain. As we go into the latter part of the week, Friday in particular, the high pressure gradually drifts away, low pressure to the south, and we get some southerly winds in for a while. It's still cold down there, as you can see, but the winds will be lighter, and that will make it feel less cold than it has been. What about tonight? It's a cold night again tonight, a widespread slight frost with temperatures hovering either side of freezing and generally dry too. There have been one or two bits of sleet and drizzle around today, but most of that is dying away. And that's going to give us a dry day tomorrow. Another grey start to the day, as we've had so often this last few days, but more chance tomorrow of things getting a little bit brighter. During the afternoon, most of us seeing one or two sunny spells, the best of them as they have been over the last couple of days, probably in the northwest, but the south looking a little bit brighter too. The Mid-Office experts up in the north, local forecasters up there, all think it's going to stay cloudy tomorrow, and they may well be right. The temperature's another chilly day, struggling up to around 2 or 3 degrees at best for most of us, and the wind's still with us tomorrow, so it will feel a cold day. But as those winds ease off later in the week, it should begin to feel a little bit milder. Here's a summary.
Sponsored by Powergen, producing electricity, whatever the weather.